Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Well, it's the Trump trade today as markets globally react to the elections. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. And markets jumpers, Donald Trump defeats Kamala Harris to win the 2024 presidential election. And the US dollar index, the DXY, explodes higher as the markets gyrate. IMF warns Kenya risks defaulting on loans as the public debt to GDP rises to 73.1%. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's get a check on the markets now, starting with the metals market. We see gold holding steady as the outcome of the tightly contested U.S. presidential race becomes more apparent now. We see spot gold unchanged, $2,749 per ounce. We've seen a strong U.S. dollar today. So we see for the U.S. gold futures, $2,749 per ounce, down about 1.16%. So we see the futures pointing to a mostly negative sentiment there, but spot gold unchanged at that moment. So we see investors there still trying to assess what's playing out with U.S. politics. Then for oil, we see oil prices fell more than 1% today, with Brent crude futures down about 92 cents, about 1.22% to trade at $74.61 per barrel, while U.S. grade there, that's the WTI, that's talking about the oil market, that's down about 1.15% at $71.16 per barrel. So we're seeing the impact there. Some markets are looking really good at this point, while some markets are taking the back foot. Joining us now to discuss, we have Mr. Dosu Odekunle, is the founder, managing director of Marquee and Synergy International Limited. That's an oil and gas trading company. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ladi. Thank you for having me.
Right. So I see you see what's playing out in the oil market, but given Nigeria's heavy dependence on oil exports, how about Donald Trump's energy policies? Especially his stance on fossil fuels and energy independence. How would that affect Nigeria's economy and its oil market share?
Well, if anything, if we go by what has happened in the past, Trump's policy focuses mostly on America first. So we expect to see a repeat of that. I guess maybe there's nothing to lose in this second round. So he's probably going to focus on, leaving a legacy of, the American first policies. So what I think will probably happen is he will face China and Russia. Policies will be I think those where we'll see policies, birth first in terms of China and then how he's going to deal with Russia. And we already know that he's always favored increased oil production for the U.S. And increased oil production obviously means lower crude prices globally. So that will affect the prices. The thing which we're unsure of is, U.S. has a wonderful relationship with Saudi Arabia. And I know Arabia being one of the OPEC parties, the members, they would like to see prices kept at a particular level. So we wait to see how that would play out. But definitely, increased production in the U.S. will see a fall in prices, and that would also, obviously impact Nigeria because we thrive on higher crude prices for our economy.
Right, definitely a hit for oil revenue. But, when we talk about PMS and fuel prices, even though we still see that debate about which fuel is better for Nigeria, is it better for Nigeria to import fuel or produce locally? We have that debate going on right now with the oil marketers and Dangote refinery. But, talking about cheaper oil, that should be good for PMS prices in Nigeria.
So it depends. Do you want my oil trading response or a customer response?
Let me have all of them at this point.
Okay, so let me start as an oil trader. Well, in trading space, competition is always good. It brings innovation. It opens up new shall I say, secrets in the industry, especially when you have new entrants who want to play in that space. Now, obviously, we can see that Dangote's refinery is a game changer. that has come to disrupt the whole oil and gas space. I probably see we'll eventually arrive at an equilibrium when the refinery is fully functional, where there'll be imports, obviously from US and third parties, and then the trading market itself will continue to import till the equilibrium is reached. I say that because as long as there is a free market, everyone is going to look for an opportunity. Dangote, being a very large conglomerate, cannot actually turn around his response time as fast as smaller trading companies. So that vacuum will always exist. He would probably focus on larger targets, larger volumes to fill that space as he approaches supply sufficiency and efficiency. But because of that vacuum, the smaller companies will actually continue to import gasoline for that space. I think that is the new market as it will evolve. I don't think it's going to be one party has all as it was in the past with NNPC alone.
All right, and we're seeing the dollar rally. It hit a high this early with the trade. So, definitely that's more pressure we're seeing for, emerging market currencies. So talk to me about the immediate impact for fuel importation to Nigeria.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Could you repeat your question?
Yeah, we're seeing the US dollar, the DXY, has rallied against a basket of currencies earlier today and, hit about 105 points. That's the US dollar index. So we're seeing the dollar, explode at this point. So talk to me about fuel importation at this time when we're seeing the dollar rally.
Okay, so currently as we sit, a higher dollar, it may shock you. The impact is not direct. It's probably indirect. I say this because while people are importing at the moment, that's supposed to create a pull on the dollar. However, currently, Dangote receives his crude in Naira. So that volume of dollar that would have existed before is not there. It's literally almost as if it was a pseudo DSDP kind of structure. He's receiving, crude in dollars and then supplying the market. Is receiving in Naira and supplying the market also in Naira. So that volume of FX is no longer there as such. So the pool of cash that will be used for imports will still be the same pool of cash as if we were selling crude directly into the market. So there will be a continuous rise in FX. That's my belief in terms of the demand. But like I said earlier on, there will be an equilibrium as his supply improves into the market. That niche space where smaller traders are importing will sort of maintain its volume as such.
Right.
So I don't see a sharp spike in the dollar rise or demand, but it will continue to rise.
Right, and definitely, I'm just hoping for cheaper fuel prices. At some point, let everybody just come to some kind of understanding. At some point,
everybody wants cheap gasoline.
Right. So, looking at the market now, looking at the oil market, is it time to go short, or are you ready? Would you say that kind of trader is late to the party?
This is in lieu of the are we referring to Donald Trump's return, or we're still looking at what Dangote is doing?
No, it's more like, Donald Trump's win at this point. Right? We're seeing oil prices already react, WTI, Brent already down. So if you're sitting on the sideline with all of that cash, are you shorting oil at this point, or you're late to the party?
No, I don't think you're late. So currently, India is supplying Europe strongly on behalf of Russia, allegedly. So if the US is going after that market in terms of when they start producing, part of his policies are to drive increased production. They need a home for it. And obviously, I don't think that is Africa. It will be Europe. Maybe they'll go after India and into the Middle East space to move more of their oil out. It's a good time to take a position on oil, but as with all positions, it can go south pretty quickly.
Right. So definitely, as an investor, you need to check all of those parameters before you make that investment choice. But thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. Mr. Dosu Odekunle is the founder, MD, Market and Synergy International Limited. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll see the mutual beneficial relationship between Nigeria and China has led to the organization of an exhibition in Lagos. That's Nigeria's commercial capital. Participants at the event laid out the potential of closer ties to boost trade with China, being one of Nigeria's largest export markets, and Nigeria being China's largest export market in sub-Saharan Africa. Take a listen.
2024 China Commodities Expo in Nigeria, holding in Lagos, could be described as a meeting point for private and public sector stakeholders in the manufacturing and trade of goods and services in both countries. The Republic of China has expressed commitment to continue doing business with Nigeria in spite of economic headwinds. And this shows in the data from Chinese Customs Authority that the volume of bilateral trade between Nigeria and China stood at $22.6 billion in 2023. The acting consul general of the People's Republic of China in Lagos, Mr. Jin Mingyun, emphasizes that the Expo's role is more than just a platform for showcasing Chinese products, but also a bridge for enhancing understanding and deepening cooperation between Nigeria and China.
The African continent.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf, draws attention to the fact that there are even more opportunities in exploring the relationship.
And with the planned rebasing of the Nigerian economy, we will soon regain our preeminent status with regards to the size and ranking of our GDP on the continent.
The cooperation can and should be deepened further with commitment from the Lagos State government.
Our administration is committed to fostering an environment that promotes trade, encourages investment, and supports local enterprises. We recognize that strong bilateral relationship, especially with a great country like China, are very vital for attracting foreign investments, and that will drive infrastructural development and create jobs for our people.
The event has over 15,000 exhibitors showcasing a diverse range of products from industries such as tires and auto parts, consumer goods and cultural products, food, electromechanical products, sporting goods, hardware, and building materials.
All right, so with the U.S. election results showing a strong win for Donald Trump, there are significant implications for the global trade and international relations. One region that could experience profound changes under his leadership is Africa, including Nigeria. Well, the continent's largest economy at this point. Well, joining us is Mr. Yomi Fahmi, is an organizational development professional, joining me from Canada. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. But during Donald Trump's first term, he focused heavily on America first, often questioning the value of, multilateral trade agreements. How do you think this policy, will affect trade relations between the U.S. and Nigeria, Africa, as his, strongly, returning to office at this point?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, great question, and what everybody should be talking about, wherever you are in the world. I mean, one of the things is very clear. There are two clear things he has always said. He has said is American first policy, which means he would prioritize America above any other place, which looks like what any leader would do. But considering his antecedent, that will have a lot of implication. But much more the fact that he has said that he's going to impose tariff and at these various campaigns. Of course, if you notice, it's not as if we have a coherent policy that he released about tariffs. He has quoted various percentages on tariffs, and he did not mention whether it was going to be geographically different. So we don't know whether the tariff will be higher for China than from Nigeria, than from Angola, whatsoever. So we don't know what the tariff regime is, but what he had said was that he was going to impose tariffs. And the implication for a country like Nigeria and for us, in Africa, we're, I think, the second or third highest trading partner with the US. It becomes a big challenge if he really decides to impose tariffs, because what that means is that any product leaving any country going to the US is going to become likely less competitive, particularly if it can produce an alternative. The first time he was president, he introduced tariffs on steel, and that affected, for example, the steel industry in a place like Canada, for example, where steel production suddenly was no more competitive, producing in Canada and taken to the US. So if he goes ahead with a tariff structure that is negative, that is high to Nigeria or any other country, then that could be a big challenge. There's also the question of whether it comes with a trade policy that makes it difficult to have products get into Canada as quickly as, to the US as quickly as they should. Because don't forget that the last time he came, he had tariffs on countries, he had tariffs on products. So we need to also be conscious of that, because the assumption is that the tariff is only going to be on countries, but he had tariffs on countries, he had tariffs on products. Remember the classical arguments and what many of the economics use as example was, for example, tariffs on washing machine to do laundry. He introduced a tariff around that, and that led to an increase in the cost of tariff in the cost of washing machine in the US. And what was very interesting in that case was that it was a target against the Chinese market. And his assumption, what he argued then, was that the tariffs on washing machine would make American producers produce more washing machine that would be affordable for Americans. But what happened was that the tariffs he introduced on washing machines made imported washing machine expensive, but also the washing machine producers in the US also didn't necessarily produce more, but they also increased their prices. So the price of washing machine went up in the US, whether it was imported or not. So we do not know whether the tariffs will be on nations or on products. What will we do?
Yeah, definitely. He's the king of tariffs. At this point, he keeps talking about all of those tariffs. But in Nigeria, we keep talking about the japa trend. So, talk to me now. What does this win mean for the japa trend we see, or does it translate to jakpada at some point?
Again, another of those things. I mean, one of the biggest arguments people had against Kamala Harris, this person that they ran against, was that she was not declaring the policy. Again, there is really no policy document that Donald Trump has produced that tells us exactly what is going to happen to immigration. But again, history helps us. You remember, Nigeria was one of the countries he placed a travel ban on when he was president. So if that happens again, then that will influence travels between the US or not. Now, many people, I remember somebody was arguing yesterday and saying, no, he wouldn't do anything against Nigeria. And I was like, yeah, but this was what happened in his first term. And the person was saying, and I said, wait, let me ask you, how old were you when it was his first term? Because a number of people were not either old enough or were not exposed to some of those challenges then, so they really don't relate with it, and that could have influenced some of the voting result that we saw from many states. Now, the first time he had introduced a travel ban, but it wasn't just a travel ban, because everybody talks a lot about the travel ban, which necessarily is going to affect immigration. But also at the same time, in the first time, there were changes in policy. So, for example, in Lagos, Nigeria, where we could do Dropbox, the system of doing application for visa, that changed. So if you wanted to go to the US, it was going to take a longer, more onerous processes, which was not the case before. Now, that is going to influence travels between both countries. If there are also issues around review of agreement, whether it's BASA, that talks about how many planes can leave US for Nigeria, how many planes that can leave Nigeria for US, that could be a challenge. But I think the big question is what he has said he will do on day one. Again, we don't have any figures. I've heard him talk about it during the campaign that he will deport on day one between 2 million. I've heard him mention 5 million. I've actually heard him mention 20 million. Now, if this deportation trend becomes real and he decides to deport people, Now, you know the huge Nigerian population we have in the US. Now, many of them are legally there. Many of them are even citizens, dual citizens to be precise. Many of them are holding high position in government. I mean, Wale Adeyemo, that is the highest ranking Nigerian official in the US, for example. Some of them are great entrepreneurs, doctors, nurses. But there is also a likelihood that we may also have quite a good number, a huge number of people that may have challenges as a result of the policy. So will it be deporting people? Is that likely going to happen? So all of that could influence JACPA or there are new policies around that makes it difficult for a Nigerian trained doctor to practice in the US.
Right.
Because when we talk about tariffs, people don't also realize that foreign education can also become a tariff issue. And then you impose restriction on foreign trained professionals to come to work in your country. Like you have seen in Canada, that's why you see more doctors who will jackpot to the UK or jackpot to the US compared to Canada. What if he adopts a similar policy and our doctors can't just move up there? So again, we're still all in the dark to say
wait and see
what will happen.
I guess it's a wait and see at this point. But thank you so much. It was great having your perspective, Mr. Yomi, Farmi, organizational development professional. We'll definitely be looking out for what happens after it's sworn in.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we're going to head straight to the market. So much happening right there in most of the markets we track globally and locally. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, let's check out the action in the markets now. Willie Bonga brings us the details. I wonder if there's green as my tie.
Well, it's unfortunately not for the Nigerian markets, but we've seen it's a big day for the U.S. elections. That's the presidential elections and other elections happening across board there. We've seen Trump having that big win, we didn't see this coming. Well, many people maybe did see this coming.
Some will say they saw it coming.
Wait, some will say they saw it coming because they did better on Trump winning. But many did think that Kamala Harris would win the election because they had that neck and neck, tie.
Oh, the tie race.
Yes, but at the very last minute, we saw that turnaround and Trump leading and winning with about 277 votes in Congress, that leading that election, and it's quite phenomenal. It's a historic one for the U.S. Trump coming in for the second time and, notching that 47th presidential seat.
What a comeback.
What a comeback for Trump. And we're hoping to see the markets in other climes react to this, but maybe they're reacting already because we see the Nigerian exchange dropping at 0.2%, but we know that's not what's happening there. But we see the GSE, South Africa's market, also reacting sharply to probably that news. And it's because we saw that dollar rally in the market. That's what we're seeing, but I'm not thinking that's what's happening for the Nigerian index. Like we mentioned now, we're seeing the NGX ASI dropping 0.2%, still at 96,000 points. GSE in South Africa is down 0.57%. And for the NGX, we know O&O, sell-offs are still going on there, dragging the market down. UB is also doing a number on that index. Similarly, we also see that South Africa is down. But let's look at Egypt. That's the lone gainer at intraday. It was 0.57% up at intraday. 0.86% at intraday, 31,000 points. And we see in Kenya, Tuesday's closing remarks, we're seeing that 0.2%. That's the print we had from Kenya. That's 2 days negative in a row now. Now, let's look at other markets. Let's look at what's happening. We see that President Donald Trump has won his Democratic rival, Kamala Harris, in the U.S. presidential elections to return to the White House for another 4 years. Now, that's Trump's victory is marking a series of historic firsts. We're going to be talking to Dr. Tijani Oladipupo, Group Chief Executive, First Icon Group. Good afternoon. It's good to have you on the program. It's quite an historic moment in the U.S. election. As I mentioned earlier, Trump has won the election and everyone is we're seeing the markets happy about that. Well, can you tell us which sectors of our NGX will bring it down now, would benefit more from a Trump win?
Will, we can hear me. It's nice to have you here. Thank you. So I will say with America's 47th President Trump coming for the second time again, apparently with the results coming into the market, it's a momentary reaction which we're seeing in terms of what to expect from Trump's administration. Of course, it is not the first time. The expectations are high in terms of what to look out for. It's clear it's an American first policy which the world is open to see in terms of global trade relations, in terms of protectionist agreement, and then all of that. And then, of course, largely we won't take away the implication for stock markets globally.
So we've seen the dollar index has hit a 4-month high of 105 points. Is it an all-in for dollar-denominated assets at this point for Nigerian investors and other African investors?
Yes, interesting one. Again, this is a more interesting area to look to. In the last, if you look at it, in the last couple of times, even when the federal government came through with it to deregulate and to degrade Naira, you can see how much Naira has lost. Interestingly, you can also, we've seen sell-offs in terms of dollar-denominated assets. I would say that is also a momentary reaction. In the wake of what the kind of policies Trump is likely to come up with, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of the protectionist policy for the dollars, in terms of trade restrictions, although at different points in time, both local and international analysts have come with different metrics, even though some analysts have looked to the areas of taxation and tariffs, specifically there were pronouncements around metrics like 10% on U.S. imports, 60% on tariff from on imports on China's goods, for instance. These are all targeted at providing a competitive position for the dollar. And of course, if that happens, it means that holding U.S. dollar-denominated assets becomes the norm. Of course, the U.S., which of course will have a direct impact on pricing, whether local or international. So even on the domestic scene, one of the major expectations is that they will be hiking pricing. Even foreign currency denominated, in particular dollars, will also have that experience. If that happens, without doubt, except of course if the CBN comes in again, there's a likelihood that the Naira will further depreciate even in the medium term, as we see.
But how far can the central bank, that's the CBN, and other central banks in Africa go if the dollar is doing what it's doing right now and continue to strengthen, as this could re-accelerate inflation? How far can they go?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. Either way you look at it. Yes, so on one hand, while the U.S. is trying as much as it is to protect the dollar, like I said earlier, the implications are wide. One is, like I said earlier, the implications are that first, all dollar-denominated assets, institutional investors want to hold dollar-denominated assets. And of course, they will also have an implication, for instance, on monetary policy in the areas of hawkish stance. If this hawkish stance is maintained, what further means is that inflation also becomes higher, inflation also goes higher, such that the local market will, of course, will also want to look at policies that will make the Naira also competitive. If that happens, MPC, of course, will also expect that this stiffening will continue to happen. Of course, cost of funds will rise, and then all the attendant direct implications for other macroeconomic variables will also follow suit, just like what we've experienced in the last couple of months.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tijani Oladipupo, Group CEO, Group Chief Executive, First Icon Group, for sharing a perspective on Business Incorporated today.
Thank you, Will Fahad.
So look to the Middle East now, where major Gulf markets gained that intraday as Donald Trump claims victory in the U.S. presidential election. The Abu Dhabi index was up 0.49%. We've seen the Dubai index, however, Dubai index was up 0.49%. However, we see Abu Dhabi not so Positive, but slightly positive. That's moderate growth, 0.14%. Let's look at other markets in that region. We see Saudi and the Tadawul index doing a 0.64%. That's a good one for the market, reacting strongly to that Trump win. And the Qatari index was up 0.22%. Now, seeing in the U.S. now, we see the stocks are poised for a booming rally on Wednesday as Donald Trump wins the election, the 2024 presidential election. He secured 277 electoral college votes to notch this historic win. Now, futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average soared over 1,200 points, and that's about 2.95%. We see S&P futures also soaring 2.31%, and NASDAQ futures also jumping 1.74%. Now, the last time we saw the blue chip, that's the Dow jump more than 1,000 points in a single day, was in November 2022. Now, Bitcoin also rallied, hit a record high, a new high, and the US dollar, we spoke about that, rallied against all other global currencies. Now, small cap stocks also saw a boost, but Tesla, we see Tesla stocks surged about 13% in pre-market trading, and some analysts also say Tesla could reach $1 trillion in market cap under a Trump win. Now, right now, it's a risk-on rally for stocks, and we will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. Let's look at Asian Pacific markets, which had closed earlier today. We had mixed sentiments in that for Wednesday, following the big rally in the U.S. as investors were watching to see how the results would pan out. But we're seeing Trump winning now, so let's see what will happen tomorrow. Now, Japan's Nikkei 225, we see 2.61% up to close Wednesday's trading session. City Kospi in South Korea reacting negatively, 2.23% down. Hang Seng in China was 0.52%, also down. We see Shanghai index also down 0.09%, and the Nifty 50 in India was up, however, 1.09%. Like all these happenings in the markets, it's more like jitters, especially for Asia. They were like watching the sidelines, what's going to happen? Some of them were like leg in and leg out. The risk off, sentiments were there. We also saw risk on sentiments, and we saw that rally. People are betting on Trump winning, and Trump did win. And now we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, the historic Trump trade at this point. Thank you so much, Will, there, for giving us details of most of the markets that we track. So it's all about the U.S. elections today. Let's get a check on what's playing out in the UK. Juliana joins us now. Good to have you, Juliana. So we see it's been described as the greatest political comeback, in history. How's this being received in the UK? And I see Keir Starmer has extended his congratulations already.
Good afternoon, Laddie. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, has extended his congratulations, as with other world leaders, on X, formerly known as Twitter, but then also at the dispatch box, because believe it or not, there is other news happening in the world today, and Prime Minister's Questions is currently ongoing. This is the first time we're seeing the new leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, going head-to-head with Sir Keir Starmer. And as to be expected, as we are, of course, the Palace of Westminster are talking about what can only be described as an absolute monumental victory. We know the polls got it absolutely wrong, including us, Laddie. We're probably guilty too. We thought it was going to be close, but clearly it wasn't. It was a historic win. And I think there are mixed reactions in the UK. I was on the channel yesterday speaking with Amarachi on The World Today, and we were looking at some of the polls that were coming out of Britain. And it did show that most Brits did want a Kamala Harris victory, whether that is the millennials or the Gen Z. However, and I think that's pretty clear, that there were pockets of support amongst British males, British white males, who, of course, are very happy today. There's been a slew of political bigwigs, including the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, the leader of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage, as well as the former UK Prime Minister too, Liz Truss. They have been in America endorsing Donald Trump, campaigning on his behalf. And of course, they are very delighted at his win. There are going to be significant changes, some good, some bad. I suppose that depends on where you lie on the political spectrum. But I think for the Labour Party and the British government, this is going to be a time to pause and reflect because, of course, there have been some absolutely awful, shall we say, things said by senior Labour Party members about Donald Trump, the now president-elect of the United States, including David Lammy. I know David Lammy, the foreign secretary, was in Nigeria with President Tinubu on Monday, I believe it was. You know, he has said publicly on record that he thinks Donald Trump is a white supremacist. He thinks he is a neo-Nazi. You know, these are comments that cannot be erased. And, you know, let's see what Donald Trump's taste for revenge is, because there are a lot of people in very powerful positions in the UK government now who have rejected him, but they will not be able to do that anymore. I think it goes without saying that, you know, the US is the UK's strongest ally. You know, that term special relationship, which was coined by Winston Churchill in 1946, has stuck. And yes, it has been strained over the years. It was strained during the Donald Trump and by Boris Johnson years. It became further strained during the Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak years. It is likely to become strained again over the Keir Starmer, Donald Trump tenure. However, I think it's good that Sir Keir Starmer's team made sure that he spent some time with Donald Trump when he was in America for the United Nations General Assembly in September. According to his aides, he spent a couple of hours with Trump over dinner, and it was quite friendly. But of course, we know that a left-leaning Labour Party leader is not going to see total eye-to-eye with a right-leaning Republican. But, you know, if you think about Tony Blair and George W. Bush, they did manage to strike a balance. So I think that's what everybody's waiting for. I think Kemi Badenoch pretty chuffed this morning that she was able to get some digs in at Sir Keir Starmer and his front bench, because nearly all of them sitting on the front bench of this government have, you know, targeted or attacked the president-elect of the United States. And Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives, they haven't done that. So this plays right into their playbook. So, yeah, all to play for, all very, very exciting and intriguing. And of course, Brits are as hooked on this as the rest of the world is.
Right. It'll be great to see how most of these relations play out, you know, once Trump is sworn in. But how are the markets in the UK looking?
I've got to tell you, the markets are in tip-top shape. It's so funny. That's why you've got to be careful these days. You've got to be careful about listening to so-called experts. That, you know, the suggestion was that, you know, the markets would be in turmoil because of Trump's protectionist policies, right? You know, it's all about America first. I think, you know, during some of the rallies, there were suggestions that perhaps tariffs would be put on imports of up to even 1,000%. That's not the case. We're seeing markets react. Markets are buoyant this morning. We're seeing lifts across all sectors, because I think some businesses do believe that, you know, there could be a positive implication on trade, because if Trump is going to be the president that he says he is, which is going to stop wars, then that's good. That's good for the world. We know how much trade has been impacted because of the conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And so that's why I think we're seeing such a buoyancy on the markets this morning. Let's have a look at intraday, those numbers, which of course are changing momentarily, but the all share is up 1.42%. The FTSE 100 is up by 1.01%, and the FTSE 250, that domestic market, it's up by 1.03%. Now, we know that the US dollar is riding on, I believe, a 12-month high. Of course, this is going to push down the value of the British pound. A British pound at intraday will buy you $1.28. So the pound is trading down 1.31% against the dollar. A pound will buy you €1.20, and the pound is trading up against the Japanese yen by 0.42%. So it's all coming out in the wash total analysis. We've also got the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee meeting tomorrow, a very important monetary policy update on interest rates, which are currently still sitting significantly high at 5%. The markets have priced in a 0.25% drop tomorrow. This is the first time we're seeing the MPC meet after the budget, and of course, after what has been the defining moment of 2024, which is that Donald Trump has won the US presidential election. Quite shocking, but remarkable nonetheless, Laddie.
Yeah, definitely quite an interesting trading week. That's this week with some investors, smiling to the bank at this time. That's if you went out there to play. But thank you so much, Juliana, for giving us most of the details right there in the UK. Thank you. Yeah, so if you're longing or shorting some asset classes right now, you're either smiling or hitting yourself for taking that trade right now. But let's see if the U.S. election euphoria is hitting European markets. Join us for this is DW correspondent Chibonda Chimbelu. Great to have you, Chip.
Hi, Laddie.
So how's it looking over there in Europe?
Well, markets are also trading higher here in Europe, so it's not just the FTSE. Markets are up, and of course, it's a bit of a surprise. But of course, it's also not across the board. Some stocks are not performing as well. So if we look at industries that are not doing well, one example is the renewable energy sector, and that is down around 5 to 9%, at least last time I checked. And that's mostly because President-elect Trump has mentioned that he would end offshore wind projects in the US on the first day of his presidency. So that is one reason that sector isn't doing well. And then when we look at the auto sector, that's also the case. But earlier today, we had German luxury car maker BMW report Q3 earnings, and it really disappointed. Its net profits declined more than 60%. That was worse than analysts had expected, and BMW said business in China was worse than anticipated, which was the reason why. But of course, also the prospect of any potential tariffs from the Trump administration, perhaps next year, would be something that would hurt the auto sector. And we've seen auto sectors trading lower this year because of fears around that. And of course, the situation in China hasn't helped either. So those are at least two sectors that are doing as well, but it seems that European markets are so far responding quite positively to the news that it's a Trump victory. Right,
and I'm sure we're already getting some congratulatory messages from most of the top European leaders.
Exactly. There have been congratulatory messages. Of course, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, he addressed press earlier today. He made a statement in front of press. He didn't take any questions. And he did congratulate Donald Trump on winning the election. Obviously, Scholz, the chancellor, is a left-leaning politician. So for him, this is not something that would align. A Republican win doesn't align with him politically. However, obviously, this is about future relations between Germany and the U.S., and not just Germany and the U.S., but also the EU and the U.S., and that is something he pointed to. He talked about working together, like they can work together successfully, and they've done it over years. It's a mutually beneficial relationship over the decades, and that is something that they need to work together on, and that's something he really emphasized in his speech and his statement. And then, of course, also on top of that, he did also talk about the need for the EU to stick together. So obviously, there is a recognition that the EU needs to put up one face when it comes to speaking with the United States going forward, because of course they do see in Trump someone who might not always be the best of partners for the European Union. And so that's something he mentioned. He mentioned having had a phone call with French President Macron earlier today. And then of course there's also an EU summit tomorrow of EU leaders in Budapest. So that's something that will be, of course, top of the agenda. So EU leaders will be trying to also make sure that they have a strategy, a game plan for dealing with Trump or any potential surprises that he might have for them, whether that's tariffs or any other type of policies that might not be quite appealing for the European Union. That is something that to be seen. But we can expect EU leaders to try to see if they can work together going forward as well.
Right. I guess it's also a wait and see there in Europe. Thank you so much, DW correspondent Japonda Chimbelu. Thank you. All right, now let's look at some other stories now in South Africa. We see in an exclusive interview with Channels Television, Dr. Andrew Benny, that's a senior researcher in climate policy and food systems at South African Institute for Economic Justice. He highlighted greenhouse gas emissions as the primary environmental impact of beef production on climate change. He also outlined sustainable practices that could help reduce the industry's climate footprint. South Africa correspondent Innocent Somosa reports.
The Institute for Economic Justice in South Africa recently launched a white paper titled Beef with Climate Change, which focuses on growth, equity, and a just transition in the country's beef sector. I spoke to Dr. Andrew Benny, a senior researcher at the Institute for Economic Justice, about the primary environmental impact of beef production on climate change.
So the most prominent environmental impact of beef production is around its contribution to climate change, and specifically to the greenhouse gas emissions causing climate change. So beef cattle emit methane as a byproduct of their digestive process. Essentially, they burp it out, is the main source of methane, and then their manure is also a source of methane.
He also highlighted sustainable practices that can be implemented in beef production to reduce its climate footprint.
So the first is we should continue growing beef production through intensive systems like feedlots, where you provide cattle with very scientifically formulated feeds, the medicines and so on to boost their growth, to keep making them grow even more quickly than they already do in feedlots, because the argument is there that then you reduce the GHG emissions per kilogram of beef. And so kind of authors who've looked at these approaches, the way they label that approach is you grow beef production through intensive systems, and then you use technology and so on to manage the damage.
But what role do government policies play in mitigating the climate impact of beef production?
The first thing is we need, I think, a proper socio-ecological assessment of beef production in South Africa. And that means we need a full baseline of not just what are the environmental impacts of beef production, but also what are the social dimensions. So what are the conditions of workers in the system? And that can provide us a better basis to say, okay, these are where, with this comprehensive review, these are where the points of intervention are needed to shift the system.
Meanwhile, the Institute believes that technological innovations can offer hope in reducing emissions, ensuring that the industry can adapt and thrive in a changing climate. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Somosa, Channels Television News.
Thank you, Innocent. Well, to other stories now, the International Monetary Fund has warned that Kenya could default on its loan obligations, driven by low revenue collections and export underperformance. In its 7th and 8th reviews under the Extended Fund Facility, an extended credit facility, the Bretton Woods institution noted the public debt had increased to 73.1% of GDP in June 2024. You see, Kenya faces large external and domestic debt service obligations in the coming years, with the average debt service to revenue ratio exceeding 60% during 2024 to 28. And back to the Trump trade now. We see the crypto market, massive green on the screen there, and investors piling cash into the crypto market. We see shorts. The massive shorts liquidation right there in the market. And by short, we mean that if you were betting that Bitcoin would go down because of the U.S. elections, whoever emerged as president, but we're seeing those shorts not looking good right now, because if you're in a long position, then you are smiling to the bank with Bitcoin there up 6.92%, $73,000. Ethereum not left out of that party, $2,613. So majorly green on the screens, and that little pocket of red that you see there is a stable coin. Let's look at the sentiment in the market. How are investors feeling? I'm talking about the fear greed index. That's 70 points. I'm sure at some point if this continues, then we might actually see extreme greed. All right, join us now to analyze. We have Debayo. Debayo is a co-founder, ICP.Hub Sahara. Great to have you on the show.
Great to be here once again, Laddie. Thank you for having me.
Right, and I'm sure with the look on your face, I don't think you're a shorter of Bitcoin right now. But talk to me about this Trump win. Is it, with what we're seeing with Bitcoin, is this going to continue this rise? Are we seeing another all-time high loading with Bitcoin?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one major thing that is very good for any of the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all sorts, is government advocacy. And Trump has been a long supporter of Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency industry, for quite a while. And the fact that it has a very strong chance of becoming the next US president, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pumps for the entire crypto industry, Bitcoin and all sorts. And of course, we're also expecting a very serious alt season, which is the season that all altcoins start to rise. So each one, probably 2 or 3 altcoins per day, pumping to about 100% or thereabouts. So we are all quite interested and anticipating all these movements of the altcoins in this particular season.
Right, and it looks like, Bitcoin, seems to be, getting all the attention and all the fun, in this market. And we know most investors in the crypto market, they like the altcoins. They feel like the altcoins, give them more gains. That's anything that is not Bitcoin in the market at this time. But do you think an alt season, maybe a Trump win, is what's going to usher this market into an alt season?
Yeah, alt season usually is what follows. Let's say after there is a continuous rise in the Bitcoin price. And during the accumulation period for the Bitcoin, then alt season tends to be invoked. So people tend to move away from Bitcoin and then start pumping and pumping altcoin. Is what the alt season is all about. And of course, after seeing a continuous rise in the Bitcoin price, the next thing that we'll see is the altcoin season, which in a lot of altcoins you tend to increase in price, some doubles, triples, quadruples, and so on and so forth. So it both are actually quite expected during this particular election and after the election, of course.
And talking about, we've seen during the campaign trail, we did see, Donald Trump speak positively, about the cryptocurrency industry and Bitcoin and all of that. But do you see this continuing, once he's sworn in as president, or are you industry members there a little nervous, about what Trump might do really, when he's elected as sworn in as president?
Yes, I mean, the same thing is always applicable in all the industry. For instance, we can expect there to be some sort of reduction in price by the time he gets elected as a president, because there will be some stringent sort of policy associated or attributed to Bitcoin. There will be more of a policy, more of regulations, just to put things in the right order. And during this particular period of time, the prices of Bitcoin, of course, might be a little bit, reducing, and the altcoin as well. And but provided that it takes it serious and it has the support of all the houses, all the government parastatals, trying to regulate this industry, then we'll definitely be seeing more of an increase in price over time. But while the election is still ongoing, and there's going to be a pump definitely in all the markets, but post-election, after the election, everything tends to settle down a little bit.
Right. I guess maybe the right trade might be to short, post-elections, but we'll definitely see. But, during the campaign trail, Donald Trump did say that he would fire the SEC chair. That's Gary Gensler once he gets into office. So is Gary Gensler gone, in your opinion, at this point?
Well, I mean, to me, it's just probably a campaign strategy to be able to his side most of those who are supporters of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. But will he be able to do it? Actually, or would he do it after he's been elected as a president? That is left for us to see over time.
All right, there's a wait and see at this point. Thank you so much. That was Debayo, co-founder, ICP.Hub Sahara.
Thank you very much once again, Laddie.
All right, so that's it. That's how most of the markets we track are looking. Hopefully, you are in the right trade. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Laddie Williams from me and the team right here at Channels HU. It's bye for now.